Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Darren Caldwell. And before I tell you how I shocked an entire church full of mourners, exposed my own family's lies, and walked away with more than just an inheritance, let me tell you how I got here. Because the pain didn't start at my father's funeral. It started long before that. I grew up in a town so polished and perfect you'd think it came out of a Hallmark movie, Orchard Ridge, Vermont. Picture white fences, weekly farmers markets, and neighbors who knew the color of your curtains. We were the Caldwell family. Upper class, respected, feared even. My father, Charles Caldwell, was a prominent attorney, hard-faced, successful, with a deep voice that could quiet a room in seconds. My mother, Margaret, ran charity events and art galas like a general overseeing a military campaign. My siblings, Sean and Alexandra, were the shining stars, football captain and debate team queen. And then there was me. The middle child, the quiet one. The gay one. The one nobody talked about. In our house, appearances were everything. My father didn't raise children, he sculpted them like trophies. He used to say, "A Caldwell doesn't cry. A Caldwell doesn't fail. A Caldwell doesn't embarrass this family." And being gay. That was the ultimate embarrassment. I knew I was different by the time I was 11. While Sean was chasing girls and Alexandra bragged about her popularity, I was sketching in my room, listening to Sondheim and dreaming of cities far away from Orchard Ridge. But I buried it. I had to. I watched my father throw out a family friend once, just for mentioning his son had a boyfriend. That same night, my mother warned me, "Be careful what you say around your father. You don't want to break his heart." I learned early how to hide. I smiled in family photos, wore the right clothes, dated girls I didn't care about. I even joined the lacrosse team, where I spent more time in the locker room pretending to belong than actually playing. But pretending didn't make it hurt less. Every family dinner was a performance. My father talked about court cases, Sean bragged about touchdowns, Alexandra updated everyone on which Ivy League college was courting her. And I spoke only when spoken to. I kept my art hidden in a locked drawer under my bed. I kept my heart even deeper. At 17, everything began to crack. I was caught, by Sean, of all people, kissing a boy behind the school auditorium. He didn't say anything at first. Just gave me this look like I was filth. Then he told my parents. That night, my father didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just stood there, looking at me like I was something broken. "You're not my son," he said calmly. "I don't raise perverts." My mother didn't say anything at all. They didn't kick me out. That would have caused scandal. Instead, they ignored me. At dinner, my seat at the table stayed empty. My name wasn't spoken aloud. It was like I had died. Sean and Alexandra didn't let up either. Sean called me a disease when we passed in the hallway. Alexandra told everyone at school that I had issues, which led to whispers and snickers wherever I went. The isolation was crushing. I'd come home and find family portraits with my face cropped out. Invitations to fundraisers arrived with only 3 names. I was erasing myself just to survive in the house I was born in. When it came time for college, I escaped. A small design school in Chicago offered me a partial scholarship, and I took it without telling anyone until I was already gone. I didn't even get a goodbye. Chicago became my oxygen. I could breathe there. I could be myself. I fell in love with art, with color, with freedom. And I met Tyler. He was the first person who didn't want to fix me or change me, he just wanted me. We shared a cramped apartment and too many frozen pizzas, but it was the happiest I'd ever been. Still, I couldn't shake the weight of being unwanted. I'd send postcards home every Christmas. Never got a reply. I mailed my father a painting I'd done of Orchard Ridge's courthouse, his pride and joy. He never mentioned it. Probably trashed it. The last time I saw any of them was 8 years ago, at a distant cousin's wedding. My mother refused to meet my eye. Alexandra brought her fiancé, a hedge fund guy who shook my hand like I was contagious. Sean. He didn't even acknowledge me. They introduced themselves as Charles Caldwell's children. Like I was never born. I didn't hate them. I pitied them. Until the call. It was a cloudy Tuesday morning when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a strained voice on the other end said, "Darren, this is Elise, from your father's law office. I'm sorry to inform you, Charles passed away last night." Silence. Not because I was in shock. But because I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Grief? Relief? Nothing. She continued, "The funeral is on Saturday." I thought you should know. And, his will, he left instructions for you to attend the reading. I remember staring at the phone long after the call ended. Charles Caldwell, the man who'd erased me, wanted me at his funeral. Why? Tyler tried to talk me out of it. "You owe them nothing," he said. "Let the dead bury their dead." But I had to go. Not for them. For me. To face the ghosts. To hear whatever truth they didn't want me to hear. To say goodbye, not to my father, but to the version of myself they tried to kill. I booked a flight to Vermont that night, packed a single suit, and stood in front of the mirror trying to prepare for war. What I didn't know then was that the real battle hadn't even started. It would begin at the funeral. With one whispered word that would turn into a storm. And end with a video that would leave my family shattered forever. I flew into Vermont under gray skies, as if the whole state were mourning something other than my father. The chill in the air wasn't just from the early spring wind, it was the kind of cold that wrapped itself around your bones and whispered, "You don't belong here." As I drove from the airport toward Orchard Ridge, everything looked the same. Same manicured lawns, same white fences, same small-town pride. Nothing ever changed in that place, except me. I wasn't the scared, closeted boy they tried to mold anymore. But the pain? It came roaring back the second I turned onto our street. The Caldwell house stood like a ghost of my past. Still perfect. Still polished. A place that once held my dreams, and slowly suffocated them. I didn't even knock when I arrived. I wasn't planning to go inside. I just parked across the street and sat in the rental car, watching the windows like someone expecting a monster to appear. The funeral was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next day. At First Presbyterian Church. The same one where I was baptized. The same one where I sat through Sunday services in pressed slacks while my father squeezed my shoulder every time I fidgeted. The same one where, at 13, I overheard a deacon whisper, "That Caldwell boy is too soft. Too quiet. You think he might be." That church knew who I was long before I ever did. And yet I walked in the next morning like a man on trial. Everyone turned to look. The whispers were immediate. "Is that Darren?" He came back. Well, of course he did, probably here for the money. My mother sat in the front row, dressed in black, her veil pulled low, but I could still see the hard line of her mouth, set like stone. Sean was next to her, arms crossed, jaw clenched, his expression as cold as ever. Alexandra was dabbing her eyes like she was auditioning for a role in a tragedy. No one acknowledged me. Not a nod. Not a glance. Not a word. I took a seat in the back pew. Alone. The service started. Hymns. Bible verses. Half-hearted eulogies by people who had no idea what kind of man Charles Caldwell really was. They called him a pillar of the community. A loving father. A true patriot. My stomach churned with every word. Loving father? Try the kind of father who once made me scrub blood out of my own nose after Sean punched me for looking at him weird. And when I told him why, my father simply said, "You probably provoked him." Still, I stayed silent. Until the final moment. The pastor invited family members to say a few words. No one moved. My mother remained still. Sean stared ahead like he was made of marble. Alexandra sniffled and clutched a tissue. So I stood up. The silence was immediate. I could feel dozens of eyes burning into me. I walked down the aisle, each step feeling like I was walking into fire. My hands were trembling. My mouth was dry. But my heart. It beat like a war drum. I took the podium. Looked out at the rows of faces that had erased me. And spoke. "My name is Darren Caldwell," I said, voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Charles Caldwell was my father." Murmurs. One woman gasped. "I know some of you forgot that. Some of you never wanted to admit it." I scanned the crowd. My mother's face was unreadable. Sean looked ready to explode. Alexandra wouldn't meet my gaze. "I'm not here to rewrite history. My father was complicated. Brilliant in court. Respected in town. Feared in his own home." I paused. A few heads turned uncomfortably. I was never good enough for him. Not strong enough. Not loud enough. Not straight enough. A gasp. Another murmur. And when I told him the truth about who I was, he threw me away. Just like that. And none of you stopped him. I locked eyes with my mother. "Not even you." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "I'm not here for sympathy. And I'm not here for money. I'm here because I loved my father, even when he didn't love me back. Even when he pretended I didn't exist. I came to say goodbye. Because I'm still his son. Whether any of you like it or not." I stepped down. The silence was deafening. And then, it happened. A voice from the back. Shrill. Dripping with venom. "You're a bastard. You only showed up to take what isn't yours." I turned slowly. An older woman I barely recognized. One of my father's cousins, I think. Face flushed. Finger pointing at me like I was a criminal. "Charles wouldn't want you here. You abandoned your family." My knees nearly buckled. I felt the eyes again. Judging. Hateful. But something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, calmly, "Funny. I don't remember leaving. I remember being kicked out." I walked out of the church to the sound of whispers and rustling pews. It felt like I'd been exiled all over again. But outside, I didn't crumble. I stood under the gray sky, letting the cold air sting my skin, and whispered, "You won't erase me again. Not this time." That night, I got a call. It was my father's lawyer. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, voice hesitant. "Your father's will, there's something you need to see." And just like that. Everything I thought I knew was about to change. I barely slept that night. The voice of that woman in the church echoed in my head, "You're a bastard." Like a hammer against glass, trying to shatter every ounce of peace I had left. But what haunted me more was what the lawyer said on the phone, "There's something you need to see." I arrived at the office early. Caldwell and Knox was carved in stone on the side of the red brick building downtown. My father's name would remain long after he was gone. It made my skin crawl. I stepped into the conference room. It smelled like leather and old books. Dark wood furniture. A view of the courthouse across the street. It was all too perfect, just like my father liked it. Seated at the head of the table was Mr. Alan Bristow, my father's longtime lawyer and friend. He looked up as I entered and offered a tight smile. "Darren," he said, gesturing to a seat. "Thank you for coming. There's a lot to go over." I noticed the thick folder in front of him and the silver MacBook open beside it. My mother was already there, sitting in a stiff-backed chair like she was made of ice. Sean leaned against the wall with crossed arms and a scowl etched into his face. Alexandra was glued to her phone, pretending not to see me. No one said hello. Mr. Bristow cleared his throat. Per Charles's will, the estate is to be divided among his 3 children and his wife, Margaret. He paused, his eyes briefly flicking to me. "But there's a caveat." Sean scoffed. "What kind of caveat?" Bristow took a deep breath and turned the laptop toward us. "Your father recorded a video. Privately. Just before his final hospitalization. He asked that it be played with all family present, especially Darren." Everyone froze. Alexandra blinked. "What?" My mother's voice was like ice cracking. "That wasn't in the draft I approved." "No," Bristow said. "This version supersedes the previous one." He pressed play. The screen lit up with a video dated just 2 weeks before his death. There was my father, Charles Caldwell, sitting in his study, bathed in amber lamp light. His face looked older than I remembered. Lines etched deeper. His shoulders slightly slumped. But the eyes, those same eyes I feared growing up. He took a deep breath. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone." Silence filled the room. I spent my life trying to build a legacy. I taught my children to be strong. To lead. To never show weakness. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to show love. I blinked. Was this real? He looked down for a moment, then back at the camera. I failed my son Darren. When he told me he was gay, I didn't just reject him, I erased him. I thought I was protecting the family name. What I was really doing, was destroying my family from within. My mother's fingers curled into her lap. "I read every letter you sent, Darren," he said, his voice faltering for the first time I could ever remember. "Every card. Every gift. I kept them in the top drawer of my desk. I just didn't have the courage to reply. I don't expect forgiveness. But I owe you the truth." He paused, his eyes misty now. "I'm proud of you. You didn't become who I wanted, you became who you truly are. And that's braver than anything I ever taught Sean or Alexandra. You are my son." My breath caught. Alexandra lowered her phone. Sean muttered, "What the hell is this?" My father continued, "To make amends, I'm leaving half of my estate to Darren. Not because of guilt, but because I trust him to carry forward the Caldwell legacy the way I never could. With honesty. With heart." He looked straight into the lens, his expression softer than I'd ever seen. "I love you, son. I always did. I was just too afraid to show it." The screen went black. Silence thundered in the room. My mother's eyes were fixed on the table. Sean exploded. "This is Bull's ******. He was manipulated. This is fake." Mr. Bristow calmly placed a signed, notarized copy of the video affidavit on the table. "It's legally binding. I recorded it myself." Charles was fully lucid. No coercion. Sean stood, pacing furiously. He gives him half the estate. After 11 years of silence. For what, pity? Alexandra looked stunned, but for once, she didn't add fuel. My mother finally spoke. Charles was confused. "That man you just saw, that wasn't the Charles the first married." I laughed bitterly. "No, Mom. It was the Charles who finally saw me." Sean turned to me, rage burning in his eyes. "You show up, get a sympathy check, and now what? You think you're better than us? I stood slowly, voice low and calm. I don't want your approval. I don't want your seat at the table. I never did. But I am taking what he left me. Not because of money. But because, for once in his life, my father saw me. Mr. Bristow nodded. The division will proceed as instructed. Margaret retains ownership of the house and assets totaling $2 million. Sean and Alexandra receive $250,000 each. Darren, your portion is $5 million, along with rights to the family trust and the downtown building. They all stared. I remained still. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. But deep inside, something darker stirred. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was the beginning of something bigger. Something I would make sure they never forgot. The irony wasn't lost on me. They called me a bastard. They whispered about how I only came back for money. But the truth was, I didn't want a damn penny of it. I didn't want the stained Caldwell fortune. I didn't want their pity. What I wanted, was for them to feel it. Feel what it's like to be unseen. Unheard. Unloved. I walked out of Bristow's office not triumphant, but numb. My father's words from the video played over and over in my mind, I love you, son. I always did. I was just too afraid to show it. Too afraid. That fear cost me everything. And now, he wanted to pass the guilt on to me in the form of a fortune and a heartfelt video? No. That wasn't closure. It was just a beginning. So I made a decision. If they had spent years pretending I didn't exist, I'd make it impossible for them to forget me now. Back in Chicago, I opened the box I'd taken from my father's study. The letters I'd written, the postcards I assumed were trashed, they were all there. Some opened, some still sealed. And tucked at the bottom was a small leather-bound notebook, his handwriting filling every page. Dates. Thoughts. Regrets. In one entry, he wrote. Margaret says Darren is too far gone. I told her he's still our son. She told me I'd have to choose the family or the shame. I didn't say anything, which was my answer. I sat there, the notebook trembling in my hands. She knew. My mother knew he was trying to reach out. And she stopped him. That was the match. The spark. The fire that lit the fuse. Step 1, the exhibition. I reached out to a friend from my early years in design school, Ella. She ran an art gallery downtown and had always admired my personal work, even the pieces I had once been too afraid to show. I proposed a show. Not just any show. Family portraits, a visual reclamation. It would be part art, part confessional. A gallery of pieces, paintings, sketches, installations, depicting the silence, the shame, the erasure I endured growing up in the perfect Caldwell household. I poured everything into it. I recreated the dinner table, empty except for one missing chair, mine. I painted my father's face in black and white, cracking down the center, one half proud, the other ashamed. I displayed the unopened letters I sent home for years, mounted them in glass cases, sealed in silence. But the centerpiece? A video installation. A looping projection of my father's final confession. Yes. I used the will video, the part where he apologized, where he said he loved me. I made it public. I wasn't doing it to exploit him. I was doing it to expose the truth he could never say when it mattered. Step 2, the invitations. I sent printed invitations to the entire Caldwell circle, family, friends, business partners, country club members. All of Orchard Ridge's elite. Each envelope carried the same message on the back. You were there when I was invisible. Come see what you missed. Sean, Alexandra, and Margaret received theirs hand-delivered. I knew they wouldn't come. But I knew they'd hear about it. And that was the point. Step 3, the trust. The financial inheritance. I didn't need it. So I turned it into a weapon of grace. I created the Darren Caldwell Foundation, a trust dedicated to funding LGBTQ youth scholarships and safe housing programs, particularly for those rejected by their families. The first grant, $100,000 to a Vermont LGBTQ shelter. I made sure the check was issued publicly, at the exhibition's opening night, with cameras and press in attendance. And when I was asked why, I told the truth. Because every child deserves to be seen, heard, and loved. Even if their own family can't. Then, 1 week before the gallery opened, I got a call. Blocked number. I answered. And there she was. My mother. Darren, she said, her voice tight. I saw the invitation. I said nothing. I don't appreciate being shamed in public. I almost laughed. Isn't that ironic? You're tarnishing your father's legacy. No, I said, calmly. I'm saving it. You're the one who buried it under silence. A long pause. Then, your father loved you. You know that now. I closed my eyes. Then why did you make him choose? Her breathing faltered. You let me be erased, I said, voice trembling. And now you want to control how I remember it. She said nothing. So I ended the call. That was the last time I heard her voice. Opening night came. The gallery was packed. Strangers. Allies. Members of the press. But I didn't care about them. Because in the back corner, near the installation of the cracked family portrait, I saw two figures I never expected. Alexandra. And Sean. They weren't dressed for a party. They were dressed for war. Sean stalked over to me first. What the hell is this? He hissed. You're dragging our family through the mud. I raised a hand. No. I'm dragging it into the light. Alexandra's eyes were red. She looked around the room, at the paintings, the video, the letter displays. Her expression shifted from rage to confusion to something else. She whispered, "You kept it all." I didn't, I replied. Dad did. That hit her harder than anything I could have said. Sean stormed out. But Alexandra stayed. She didn't say sorry. But as she looked at the last display, a framed copy of my father's final letter, she whispered, "I didn't know he wrote that." I didn't reply. Because she didn't need to hear my voice. She needed to listen to the silence she helped create. But the final blow? It was still coming. A twist they never expected. Because it turned out, my father left me something else. Something buried beneath the will. A truth that would destroy the legacy they tried so hard to protect. Forever. I thought the exhibition would be the end. That after the gallery opening, the public apology, and the foundation launch, I would feel peace. But closure doesn't come easy when you've lived a life of erasure. It's not a switch you flip. It's a door you have to keep walking through again and again, hoping someday it'll lead somewhere softer. And that's when the twist came. A week after the show, I got another call from Alan Bristow. His voice was shaking this time, not with nerves, but with the weight of something bigger than either of us. Darren, he said, you need to come in. There's something your father left behind. Something I didn't know existed until today. I was quiet. Bring someone you trust, he added. You're going to want a witness. The following morning, I arrived at Bristow's office with Tyler by my side. Mr. Bristow was already waiting, a thick manila envelope in his hands. His eyes met mine, heavy with concern. This, he said, placing it on the table, was found in Charles's safety deposit box. It was sealed with instructions not to open until after the will was executed and the estate distributed. He handed me the envelope. On the front, in my father's handwriting, were 5 simple words. For Darren. Read alone first. My hands trembled. Tyler squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. I wasn't. But I opened it anyway. Inside was a handwritten letter, pages long. And then, a legal document. A legally binding amendment to the family trust. I read the first paragraph, and felt my world tilt sideways. To my son Darren. If you are reading this, it means I was too much of a coward to tell you the truth while I was alive. This letter is more than an apology. It's a confession. Years ago, I discovered that the Caldwell Trust, originally created by your grandfather, was being misused by your mother and brother. Funds were being diverted into personal accounts, hidden under false charity names and shell entities. I confronted them. Your mother insisted it was for the good of the family. Sean said it was his right, that you'd never get a dime anyway, so why did it matter? I was ashamed. But I signed the tax forms anyway. I justified it to myself. Then came your letters. And I realized, the son I pushed away was the only one with any honor left. So I made changes. Enclosed in this envelope is an irrevocable amendment to the Caldwell Family Trust. Effective immediately, you are not just the largest beneficiary. You are now the sole executor. The entire trust, including assets, properties, charitable divisions, and oversight rights, belongs to you. They don't know yet. But when they find out, they'll fight it. Stand your ground. This legacy doesn't belong to those who lie. It belongs to the one who lived in truth. I'm sorry, Darren. I see you now. Dad. Asterisk. I couldn't breathe. The trust. The real family fortune. The roots of our name. I didn't just inherit money. I inherited power. Legal, irreversible power. I was now the gatekeeper of the entire Caldwell legacy. And they had no idea. Until I told them. Step 4, the reveal. I scheduled a private family meeting. Not in their comfort zone, but in mine. At the Chicago Gallery, in the very room where the portraits still hung. They came, reluctantly. My mother arrived first, stiff as ever in a black cashmere coat. Sean followed, still red with rage, barking something about lawsuits. Alexandra looked unsure, but more quiet than I'd ever seen her. I stood in front of them, calm. And dropped the folder on the table between us. What's this? My mother asked, voice sharp. Truth, I said. Sean rolled his eyes. More theatrics. I opened the folder and slid out the documents. My father's signature was at the bottom. Notarized. Certified. Time-stamped 3 weeks before his death. This is an amendment to the family trust, I said. Dad wrote it. You knew about the funds. You siphoned them off. He found out. My mother's face went pale. Lies. I pulled out the ledger, also in the envelope. Bank transfers. Dummy LLCs. A fake scholarship program that never awarded a single dollar. All traced back to accounts linked to her and Sean. Alexandra stared at the numbers in disbelief. You did this? She whispered. Sean barked, you think this holds up? You think you're going to destroy us with some old paperwork? I smiled. No. I'm not destroying you. I leaned forward. Dad already did. The shock settled in like fog. I stood in front of them with power they never imagined I'd hold. And not once did I raise my voice. Because this wasn't revenge through fury. This was revenge through silence. Through law. Through justice. Tyler and I walked them out after the meeting. None of them looked me in the eye. Alexandra whispered before she left, I didn't know about the trust. I swear. I believed her. But I didn't excuse her. Because she knew about me, and did nothing. That night, I sat alone in the gallery. The video of my father's apology played quietly behind me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel like a shadow. I felt like I had rewritten the story. But fate wasn't finished yet. Because just when I thought it was over, a knock came at my door. And behind it, one final truth. It was after midnight. The gallery had long since closed. Tyler had gone home, leaving me with a half-finished glass of wine and the soft hum of city traffic outside. I sat beneath the largest portrait in the room, my father's face, split by shadow and light, when the knock came. 3 slow taps. I thought it might be security, maybe someone from the press trying to sneak in for another quote. But when I opened the door, it was Sarah. My little cousin. Barely 20. My aunt's daughter. The only one who used to draw with me when I was a kid. The only one who once said, "I like your art, Darren. It makes me feel." I hadn't seen her in over a decade. "Sarah." I blinked. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes were wide and terrified. She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped inside quickly, pulling her hood back. "I couldn't wait anymore," she whispered. "They lied to you, Darren. They lied to all of us." My blood turned cold. "What do you mean?" She held out her phone. Shaking fingers. A file was open, an audio recording. I tapped play. The voices were unmistakable. Sean. My mother. And Alan Bristow. Bristow's voice, "He's going to see the amendment. You know that, right?" Sean, "Then delay it. Stall. Make up a clause. Anything." My mother, "We can't let Darren have that power. He'll ruin the Caldwell name. My husband was sick. He didn't know what he was doing. Bristow, he was of sound mind, Margaret. The recording proves it. Sean, then bury it. Or I swear to God, we'll bury you." My knees buckled. It wasn't just family betrayal now, it was criminal. They'd tried to suppress my legal right. They had tried to erase my father's final words. Sarah looked at me, her voice trembling. "I found the files on Uncle Bristow's cloud. I was helping him upload charity event photos for the family newsletter, and I found this. They were planning to override the will. Forge a new trust document." My heart thundered in my chest. I had been so focused on fighting them publicly, with art, with truth, I never considered they were working against me in the shadows. And Bristow? The man who claimed to be loyal to my father. He was in on it. Or at least, he'd been swayed. Step 5, the trap. I didn't panic. I strategized. With Sarah's help, and Tyler's tech-savvy mind, we compiled the metadata, the audio logs, the login timestamps from Bristow's cloud. I reached out to a former client of mine who now worked as a corporate attorney. Within 48 hours, we filed a preliminary injunction to freeze all financial activity within the Caldwell Trust. Then, we invited Bristow to a meeting. He walked in calm, confident, until I played the audio clip. His face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "From someone more honest than you," I replied. He stammered, offered excuses. Said he'd felt cornered by the family, that Margaret had threatened to take everything from him if he didn't stall me. That Sean had promised to destroy his career. "But you were my father's attorney," I said coldly. "His friend." He looked down. "Get out," I said. "And don't step near my name or this trust again." He didn't argue. He left quietly. Within a week, Sean and my mother were served court summons. Fraud. Conspiracy. Breach of fiduciary duty. The press, already curious about the public art show, latched onto the scandal like wildfire. Caldwell family implodes amidst trust war. Son once disowned now holds legacy keys. Quiet air fights back with legal firepower. But that wasn't the twist. No, that came from Sarah, again. She returned to the gallery 2 days later, holding a dusty old shoebox. "What's that?" I asked. She placed it on the table. "I found it in Grandpa's attic. It has your name on it." I opened the box. Inside were drawings. My drawings. The ones I thought were thrown away. From when I was a kid, sketches of cities, boys with wings, stories of freedom I had imagined. They were all here. Folded. Preserved. Protected. At the bottom was a photo. A Polaroid of me and my father, when I was maybe 6, at the kitchen table. He was smiling. Holding up a drawing of mine like it was a masterpiece. I remembered that day. It was the only time he ever said, "You're really talented, you know." Behind the photo, taped to the back, was a sticky note. "Never let them tell you who you're supposed to be." It wasn't signed. But the handwriting was his. I broke down. Because after all the pain, after all the silence, he'd tried, in small ways, to hold on to me. Even if he couldn't say it. The real twist? I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him. Not even at myself. Because the boy who used to draw wings on notebook paper had finally learned how to fly. The day the court ruled in my favor, the sky over Chicago was perfectly clear. No clouds. No wind. Just sharp sun against glass towers, a kind of symbolic silence, like the world knew something had finally ended. Or maybe, something had finally begun. It had taken weeks of legal back and forth. Sean tried everything, counterclaims, interviews, one pathetic public speech about being disinherited by a confused old man. My mother didn't appear in court once. Not even when the judge announced the ruling. The court finds no evidence of coercion, fraud, or mental incompetence in the execution of the revised Caldwell Trust. The plaintiff, Darren Caldwell, is the lawful executor and beneficiary. The attempted concealment of assets by Margaret Caldwell and Sean Caldwell is now under investigation by the state attorney's office. The courtroom was silent. Except for one voice. Mine. "Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement." The judge allowed it. I stood. And I told the court what I had wanted to say my entire life. This isn't about money. This was never about money. This is about what happens when families choose reputation over love. When silence becomes a weapon. When people are forced into shadows and told their truth is too inconvenient to exist. I don't want vengeance. I don't want headlines. I want to take the legacy my father left me, however flawed, and make it mean something. I want to use it to help those who've been cast aside like I was. And if that means bearing the Caldwell name as a symbol of truth, instead of denial, then I'll do it. When I finished, no one clapped. But I didn't need applause. I'd spoken my truth. And no one, could take that from me again. The fallout. Sean was stripped from the boards of every company tied to the trust. My mother, under mounting pressure from both legal scrutiny and public shame, quietly sold the family estate and retreated from public life. The garden she once kept like a shrine to perfection. Overgrown. The house. Empty. Alexandra, to her credit, called me weeks later. She apologized, not just for what she did, but for what she allowed. She admitted she knew things. Heard things. But chose silence. "I was scared," she said. "So was I replied. But I still stood up. We haven't become close. But at least, we're not strangers anymore." The final letter. Months passed. Life resumed in Chicago. Tyler and I married in a small outdoor ceremony beneath an arch of white orchids and steel blue ribbon. The guest list was intimate, friends, chosen family, and a few of the young scholarship recipients from the foundation. But the morning of the wedding, something arrived. A package. No return address. Inside was a smaller envelope, yellowed, hand-addressed in my father's handwriting. Darren. If she doesn't give this to you, someone will. Someday. I wrote this the day after you left. I never gave it to your mother. I didn't have the courage. Maybe you'll read it someday and know I wasn't completely the man they made me. You were always my brightest light. I tried to snuff it out. But it burned anyway. That fire in you, it was never a weakness. It was the one part of you I should have protected. I hope this letter finds you in peace, not pain. I hope you are surrounded by love. Real love. The kind I didn't know how to give but never stopped feeling. I'm proud of you, son. I'm sorry. I love you. Dad. I folded the letter. Pressed it to my chest. And cried, for the last time. Legacy. The Caldwell Foundation for Truth and Inclusion is now one of the largest LGBTQ family support nonprofits in the Midwest. We've funded emergency housing for queer teens in 6 states. We've built safe spaces in towns like Orchard Ridge, where kids no longer have to hide in art rooms or churches, praying to be seen. Every year, we award a scholarship to a student who writes the most powerful essay about being brave enough to be themselves. We call it the Darren Caldwell Courage Award. And yes, the gallery still stands. And every November, I hold one night open, letters we never got to send. Guests read what they always wanted to say to their families. Some angry. Some soft. All of them brave. Sometimes, people ask me, was it worth it? And I say, yes. Because I didn't just reclaim my name. I turned it into something no one could bury again. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.